y'all ain't got no respect. What's up, bro? What's up? Hell no.
He talked about respect. He talked about people who don't have any. He talked the way men talk when they are completely sure of themselves, loud, unbothered, certain that Wednesday is just Wednesday. 11 minutes. Then a car pulled up, someone got out, and Kevin Watson, weirder, who had survived the streets his whole life, who called himself an elder, who other men brought their problems to, looked at whoever was walking toward him and said 2 words.
What's up, bro?
Not fear, recognition. He knew that person. Here is what I cannot get out of my head. The chain, the one with his name on it, the one the whole internet said he died for, was found on the ground at the scene, not taken, left behind. And the only reason you leave behind the thing you supposedly killed someone for is if the chain was never the point, which means this was never a robbery. Nobody has been charged, nobody has talked, and the family says they know exactly who was in that car. Here's what I found the 10th time I watched that video. Hey everyone, please like and subscribe before we continue. Now let's get back to it. His name was Kevin Watson, born in Chicago, raised in South Austin on the west side, and which is the kind of neighborhood that either breaks people early or builds them into something the city cannot ignore. Most people who knew him never called him Kevin, they called him Tug. It was the name on his chain, an actual diamond chain that spelled the name out, letter by letter, so that nobody who passed him on West Madison Street was left wondering who they were looking at. That was intentional. Kevin Watson was not a man who wanted to be overlooked. He was 42 years old, a father to a young son employed at Out the Mud Clothing, like a streetwear brand. He ran his social media the way some men run a business, regular Facebook Lives, strong opinions on everything, the kind of voice people tuned into even when nothing in particular was happening. Because with Tug, something was always happening. His sister Shamika called him her best friend. His cousin Jacques said simply, he was a good man. No matter what he done, he helped people. His sister-in-law Brittany, after he was gone, wrote, y'all tried to steal a name chain and messed around and stole my family's joy. Not just the grief in that, the geography. Kevin Watson was not a private man. He was known, he was visible, he wore his own name in diamonds around his neck in a neighborhood where being loud and visible and known can reach people you never meant to reach, but here is what most of the coverage missed. He was not naive about any of it. He had a criminal record. He had done time for a prior shooting. He had watched men around him go away, to prison, to graves, his whole life. He knew exactly what South Austin cost people because he had already paid some of that bill himself. And yet, by every account from people who knew him, years before August 13th, 2025, he was trying to be something different inside it, not stepping away from the neighborhood, stepping into a different role inside it. He called himself an elder. He said he talked younger men down from decisions he had already made and already regretted. He said he mediated, he showed up. Whether all of that was true or partly true, it was what Kevin Watson believed about himself. And more importantly, it was what he was showing the camera the afternoon he died. Not fear, not apology, not a man who had run out of road, a man in the middle of his life doing exactly what he always did, on the block he had always been on. That is the only way to understand what happens next. West Madison Street used to be called the Equator of Chicago. That is not a nickname someone invented. That was its actual description, because the street runs perfectly east to west across the entire city. And in the middle of the 20th century, this stretch of pavement through the west side was the commercial heart of everything on this side of downtown. Businesses, restaurants, a surface rail line, the kind of place where a man could build something and be known for it. Kevin Watson grew up on blocks shaped by what happened to that street after 1968, when the West Side burned following the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and the investment left and never came back. By the time Kevin was a man, South Austin was one of the most violent stretches of the city, and Chicago, by August of 2025, had already recorded over 200 gun-related deaths that year. He understood that weight. He had already paid some of it himself, a prior criminal record, time served, the understanding that in a neighborhood like this one, being seen by the wrong person can end a career, a relationship, a life. And he went live on West Madison Street anyway, every week, in his car, on that block, wearing that chain that is either courage or stubbornness or both. Kevin probably did not think about it either way. It was just where he was. It was just who he was. He was not changing that for anybody. The night before August 13th, he had been at a club. Something happened there. And when Kevin Watson woke up the next morning, whatever had happened the night before was still on his mind. On his way to meet his cousin, he started a Facebook Live to talk about it. He had no reason to think that was a mistake.
I was speaking last night about a situation or about the situation in Mike. Yeah, I was a little...
Kevin Watson had been at a club the night before. A dispute broke out about parking, which sounds trivial until you understand that on West Madison Street, a parking dispute between the wrong people is never about parking. It is about who belongs where, who controls what, who has to back down. Kevin Watson did not back down. The next afternoon, Wednesday, August 13th, he drove to the parking lot on the 5000 block of West Madison. His cousin Jaquez Smith worked at the liquor store right there. Like, Kevin had helped Jaquez get that job. He parked and he went live on Facebook to talk about what had happened the night before, about the disrespect, about men who act like they own things they don't own. This was not unusual. This was a Tuesday, a Wednesday, any day. This was just Tug. His sister Shamika had been with him an hour earlier. There was nothing about that afternoon that told her it was different from any other. They talked. They went their separate ways. She had errands to run. By the time she came back to Madison Street, back to the block where Kevin always was, where she could always find him, something was wrong. She could see it before she understood what she was seeing. More cars than usual, a cluster of people. That particular stillness that is not stillness at all, but everyone holding something back. She rode past. She did not stop. Maybe she told herself it was nothing. Maybe some part of her already knew and did not want to know yet. When she got home, her phone started going. People on Facebook telling her to go back. Something had happened to Kevin. He'd been on the live. By the time she got there, the ambulance was already there, red and yellow crime scene tape where her brother always stood. I saw red and yellow tape up, she said later, and I knew automatically, like, it wasn't nothing good. She still doesn't know everything he said in those 11 minutes. Neither do most people who watched. Here is what most people missed when they watched that video. They watched it for the shooting, for the moment something came into frame, for the sound of the gunshot and the car driving away, 2.5 million views, most of them looking at the end, but the 11 minutes before that moment, 11 minutes of Kevin Watson in his car talking to a camera pointed at himself on a Wednesday afternoon, that footage is a record, not of how he died, of exactly who he was the day he died. Watch what he does with his hands when he talks. Watch how he looks directly into that lens. He is not performing for an audience. He is not playing to a crowd. He is just talking, the way he always talked, to whoever showed up to listen. He is talking about the night before, about a man who disrespected him, about how he handled it, about what respect costs in the world he moves through, and what happens when someone decides they don't have to pay it. He says, and this is the line I kept coming back to, "Who the world is you talking to?" A man who has spent 42 years being himself, completely, without revision, without apology, without making himself smaller for anybody. That is what those 11 minutes are. That is what I found the 10th time I watched it. He was not saying goodbye. He was just being himself, fully, without apology, right up until the moment the car pulled up. About 11 minutes in, Kevin looks up from the camera. His body language changes, not panic, something closer to surprise, recognition, like he knows this person, like he was not expecting them here now, like this. "What's up, bro?" Hands in the air, not surrender, gesture of greeting, while his eyes are doing something else. "What's up?" Then, hell no. He is out of the car, out of the frame. The camera keeps running on an empty interior. Dashboard, ceiling, the parking lot outside going about its afternoon, then a gunshot, a vehicle accelerating away, and then a voice off camera already breaking. "Hey, Tug, call the police." His friends reached him before the police did. His cousin Jacques was one of them. He watched Kevin fight to breathe. He was choking for breath, Jacques said, trying to struggle to breathe. His friend Lamar Spencer knelt down and took Kevin's hand. He squeezed. Kevin did not squeeze back. I rubbed his palm, Lamar said later. I squeezed his hand, and he wouldn't squeeze back. That is the last thing anyone who loved Kevin Watson got from him. He was taken to Mount Sinai Hospital. He was pronounced dead at 6:52 p.m., 38 minutes after the live started. The camera was still running. Chicago Police Department's Area 4 detectives took the case. Surveillance footage from businesses near the scene reportedly captured the suspect, a masked figure in the passenger seat of a white car leaning out of the window before the vehicle fled toward the Eisenhower Expressway. Police officially characterized the shooting as a targeted robbery attempt, 2 to 3 armed offenders, the chain as the likely motive. That is the official version. Now here is the detail that changes everything. After Kevin Watson was shot, still conscious, still on the ground of that parking lot, he said something. My brother trusted too many people. In the video that was brought to my attention by a couple of friends, he even said after they shot him, he said, they backdoored me, meaning the people in his crowd did it to him. That is not a man describing a robbery. That is a man shot in the chest, identifying not a direction, but a source. Not strangers from another block. Not a random car that saw the chain and made a decision. Someone inside, someone from his crowd, someone he had trusted enough to greet with his hands in the air and his voice easy. What's up, bro? He knew who set him up. He said it out loud on that parking lot, surrounded by people, and then he died. And then every single one of those people went silent. His brother, Lesler Watson, went further. In the days after the shooting, and again in a full interview in March of 2026, Lesler said publicly that this was not a random robbery, that someone in Kevin's circle knew where he would be that Wednesday afternoon, knew he would be on live, knew that the chain on his neck was the story that would make sense to everybody watching. A robbery, clean, explainable, a man wearing his wealth in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time. The chain left behind because someone panicked. Except the chain was not left because someone panicked. The chain was left because Kevin Watson was the point, not the chain. Kevin. And the only reason you know that, the only reason any of us know that, is because a dying man on a parking lot in South Austin said they backdoored me with his last breath to the people standing around him. People who have not said a word since. No arrests, no charges, no named suspect, and every person who was standing on that parking lot that afternoon has decided collectively that they saw nothing. That is not the silence of people who don't know. That is the silence of people who are afraid of what knowing costs. Kevin Watson was 42 years old. He had a son who was growing up without him. He had a brother who has spent the better part of a year watching that 11-minute video, frame by frame, looking for the face he already knows is in it somewhere. He had a sister who drove past the parking lot while he was dying inside it and has been carrying that timing ever since. And he had a chain, the one with his name on it, the one in his blood on that pavement. That is sitting in a CPD evidence locker right now with fingerprints on it that belong to someone. No arrests, no charges, no explanation for why the chain stayed and the shooter left. Hundreds of witnesses. A Facebook Live viewed 2.5 million times. One of the most documented killings in the history of this city. And silence. The kind of silence that is not about fear. The kind of silence that knows exactly what it is protecting. Rest in peace, Kevin. Your city heard you. They just can't say who else was listening. That's it on tonight's episode of Fatal Consequences. Remember, these are real stories, real decisions, and real outcomes. Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.